Hello, everyone. We'll give folks a couple of minutes here to flow into the webinar here, but thank you everyone for joining. All right, we're starting to see those numbers taper off a little bit. We'll give it another, 30 seconds here for people to flow in. Typically, my CEO, when waiting for people to attend meetings like this, will play music from his Pandora station. Unfortunately, do not have that available for you all, but you can imagine that we have some wonderful music playing in the background here. All righty. Well, let's get things started here. So thank you everyone for joining. I'm really excited for today's webinar on designing for action. So just to kick things off here, we do have a pre-webinar survey for you all that we will put on the screen as I'm speaking. So this is for folks running advocacy programs. If you could please respond to this survey, as this will be a great jumping off point for us. But as folks are filling that out, I will just introduce myself here. For those that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Ari Canner, and I manage our grassroots team here at Quorum. For those who have not yet been introduced to Quorum, Quorum is an integrated software solution for all of your public affairs needs, from legislative tracking to stakeholder engagement, and of course, the subject of today's webinar, grassroots advocacy. So I have worked with some of our largest and most successful grassroots clients, helping them design effective and engaging advocacy programs. And I will pass it off to Mike here to introduce himself and his company, LGND.
Awesome, thanks, Ari. So Mike Allio, I'm the managing partner of creative over at LGND, and I work with Patrick Sims, managing partner of strategy. Patrick and I co-founded the company about 4 or 5 years ago now, and we work with platforms like Quorum to make sure that we are engaging with our clients' most important audiences in the ways that they need, making sure that they're able to reach out to members of Congress, making sure that they are able to be informed about issues that are the most important to our clients. That's a lot about what we're focused on.
And great to meet you all. My name is Patrick Sims. I'm one of the managing partners at LGND, co-founded with Mike Allio. I lead the strategy side, and super happy to be here today. Ari and I and team have been talking about this for some time, and we've been working together for some time, Quorum and LGND, and we're going to walk through some examples of what we've done for a couple clients, whether that's with Quorum or just in thinking about how do we design for action. Right, that's what this webinar is about. And to kick it off, I'm going to pass it back over to Ari because he's got a few insights to share with you, and then we'll continue working through it.
Wonderful, thank you, Patrick. All right, so we can share these results of the poll here, and we can see that nearly 90% of you all are using email for your advocacy campaigns. So definitely the most popular format here, but we're also seeing a good amount on social media and a much smaller percentage using gamification. So we'll get to the benefits of gamification in a little bit here. And then in terms of average participation rate, we're seeing majority, or I guess a plurality of you in the 20 to 50% range. But definitely a significant chunk in the 0 to 20. So we'll certainly discuss strategies about how to get those numbers up to the upper tiers here. But Patrick did a little preview of what we'll be covering today. We will be walking you through some high-level thinking around design and advocacy. Then we will discuss kind of what we're seeing in the market that makes this so important right now. And then we will share a few examples of when organizations have done this, especially well. And we'll wrap up with a few specific tactics that your organization can use to effectively design for action. So please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A section. We will save time for those questions at the end of our session here. And then, of course, feel free to utilize the chat function to introduce yourselves or, comment on any of my fake plants here, however you feel like communicating today. All righty. Well, without further ado here, let's dive right in. So over the last several years, really, we have seen an increase in corporate involvement in advocacy. But that leaves us with a question: why should businesses care about advocacy at all? Well, first off, because employees and consumers demand it. According to a recent survey by Gartner, 87% of employees said that businesses should take a public position on societal issues relevant to their business. And then an additional 70% of customers had a better opinion of a business when the company speaks out or takes action on a social issue. So if customers and employees are demanding it, great, you can start an advocacy program. But why does it need to be designed for action? What does that even really mean? Well, we'll get into this, but what it means is that you want to craft your message and really your entire program around a narrative or a story. Essentially, you are competing with nearly everything for people's attention, both your advocates and the legislators themselves. And studies have shown that stories and emotions are better remembered than facts and statistics. So, sometimes the advocacy is crucial in order to support your business needs. And we see an example of that with, what has happened with the pandemic and the coronavirus situation over the last, year and change. If we could go to the next slide here. So, one specific example of this is with the American Hotel and Lodging Association. So in 2020, 2021, the need for advocacy has been greater than ever, starting with COVID, as corporations and trade associations in the travel and tourism, childcare industries, and more launched campaigns to make sure that they were included in relief bills. So, like I was saying, the AHLA found themselves in this position and they took steps to advocate for their industry. So you can see a quote here from their VP of Government Affairs. They had a meeting with the White House, had calls with the speaker, calls with the majority leader, minority leader. And the key message that they heard from all of these officials was that, when they talked to their executives, we have heard from the hotel industry. We know your story. We've seen the impact in our district. I've gotten the letters. I've seen it on social media. We know what you're trying to achieve and the pain that you're feeling right now. I'm sure many of you today have a large lobbying presence, but what we're seeing from AHLA here is that it can't be just your lobbying, folks. It needs to be a combination of your advocacy, your lobbying, and really engaging with the totality of the stakeholders involved so that you can have a more direct and effective impact on the issues that you care about. Legislators are just significantly more likely to act when they hear from constituents actually in their district. So, things like COVID are showing us how advocacy issues can impact your business itself. But these last few months have demonstrated that advocacy extends to large social or societal issues as well, not just ones that have a direct business impact. So in a survey from the conference board regarding corporate PAC's response to the January 6th riots, 87% of those respondees suspended or canceled their PAC contributions. And so, what that's telling us is that corporate involvement in politics and policy is once again being, dominating the headlines as corporate PACs are adjusting their contribution strategy. So a majority of respondents had stopped PAC contributions, either to some or all members of Congress. These are unprecedented actions, but the question remains, will this trend continue of PAC contributions being more heavily scrutinized, or will contributions return to pre-January 6th levels in the coming quarters? Well, we've seen over the past few weeks that voters are calling on corporations, especially those headquartered in Georgia, to speak out against restrictive voting laws. So for example, Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game from Atlanta to Colorado. And companies like Coca-Cola and Delta have spoken out strongly against the legislation. Just yesterday, it was reported that over 100 corporate executives met in a virtual meeting to discuss how companies should respond to situations like this. And what this is telling us is that this is not the end of consumers and employees demanding action from corporations around social issues. This is really probably a spark that's going to lead to a growing trend. And it is crucial that, as I was saying earlier, legislators can hear from their constituents directly. They want to see that the constituents are in lockstep with the corporations making the statements. We've seen a lot of criticism from politicians saying that, these positions from various corporations are coming from woke executives and not their employees who, actually are voters. But what we're really seeing based on the data that we saw from Gartner and some of the other statistics that we'll get into later here is that employees, consumers agree with these positions, and you're really shooting yourself in the foot if you don't leverage and communicate that support from your employees and your consumers to the legislators themselves. And then looking forward as well, the American Jobs Plan is going to be a major focus for Congress, and we're going to see corporations weigh in on the bill over the coming months. Some organizations will be in support of it as they look to take advantage of funding opportunities for infrastructure projects like electric vehicles. Others will be in opposition as the administration considers a corporate tax cut to pay for these projects. Whatever the outcome, your business and your employees will likely be impacted in some way. So organizations are definitely going to be making sure that they are part of this conversation. However, that conversation is going to be especially crowded. As the definition of infrastructure has expanded beyond just roads and bridges and ports, there will be a wide variety of stakeholders involved in this bill, and you will need to do more in order to stand out. Lobbying meetings are not going to be enough, and you need the hundreds of thousands of added voices from your employees or your partners or your customers to get that extra edge. So as you can see on this quote here from Rich Gold at Holland and Knight, the field will be especially crowded. So you need to have a full court press that comes at the issue from all angles. Your lobbyists simply can't do it alone. Now, there will of course be challenges to this. And with a proposal like the American Jobs Plan crossing over so many industries, your potential audience of advocates may not be familiar with how it will impact your industry. So you need a campaign that really grabs their attention, but also educates them on the issues and drives them to take action. So you've heard a lot from me about, why advocacy is so important and that there's, still time for you to impact the American Jobs Plan. So I'm going to kick it over to the LGND team to learn how you can extend your corporate brand to your advocacy program and craft a narrative that really resonates so that you can make that impact on the American Jobs Plan or future legislation.
All right, cool. So everybody knows what this is. This is you scrolling right now. No, it is what we are doing with our time. Has anybody ever looked up their screen time? On that computer, on this little handheld computer here. I try to pay attention to it. It was something that Apple and others rolled out, about a year or two ago. Just trying to get more and more people to be cognizant of how we're spending our time. Not that they wanted them to spend less time on the devices, but how you were spending your time. And so I won't show you what my time is spent on. It's Instagram. It's Instagram. But if you had to guess, how many hours do you spend on your phone each day? What would you say? I see some polling results coming in here. Is it 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 plus? Yeah, I'm seeing some honest people. 6 people said 1 to 2 hours. I mean, is that true? I want to learn from you. I need to reel it back. No, it's 5 hours. 5 hours on average is what Americans are doing with their mobile phones today. That's not including what many of you are doing right now, which is being on your computers, right? And watching this webinar via Zoom. This is glancing at the phone, and we're checking it around 60 times a day. This is all leading to something really interesting. 8 seconds. That's our attention span. 1 through 8. Done. Stop paying attention. Webinar's over. No, it's really interesting because this is how long we have to capture attention. In 2000, it was 12 seconds. Today, it's 8 seconds. So the attention span's going down, down, down. A goldfish, its attention span is evidently 9 seconds. I haven't personally worked with a goldfish on this, so I can't verify that. But I did hear from a colleague that it's not true that they can remember things for months. I don't know where he got that stat, but it's just like people, right? Like we can understand things for a very long time. And sure, we may only give things 8 seconds of our time. And if it's worth spending time with, we may give it even longer, right? And that's what it's about here, design for action. We want people to spend time with us, to be educated by the issues we're talking about, but in a way that it doesn't feel like they're going to school. But as in the best teachers in the classroom, they make school fun, right? It's interactive, it's educational. And one big thing I'll talk about in this webinar later on is community, right? Are you doing it together? Are you a part of the class? And is everybody contributing? I think that's really, really helpful. All right. All our best ideas are buried in these documents right here. Final report, 1 release. Who named this? But I think it's automatic. That's what occurs. And PDFs are essential, right? Like we're going to communicate things in PDFs and we're going to toss it around. And it's really great for an internal communications device. But on the web, right? This is not how things are read. These are not how things are searched for. I'm pretty sure Google actually ended the search function on these documents. And what's relevant about this is that in policy and complex topics, this is sometimes still the way we're communicating today. And that's a problem because it's not the way everybody else is. And we have to unlock it. Let's lift those insights off the page. So World Bank did a study a few years ago. They put out reports all the time, like on average, probably costs like $100,000, maybe $1 billion, put out a World Bank report, global PhDs all getting together, determining the fate of the world. And what they found was that a significant percentage of users or PDFs were never opened. So we're putting out a question here for you. How many World Bank PDFs were never opened when they looked at this? Not even once. I like it. Everybody's going big now, right? Like this is the way,
Yeah, this is also how data and numbers can lie here, Patrick, because if we did 0, 5, 10, 20, 30,
yeah,
wonder how it would look.
Yeah.
This is actually psychology experiment design webinar.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, we got some pretty good responses, like 50%. Whew, somebody's getting fired. No, it was like 30%, right? 30% of PDFs were never open, right? And that's a lot of time and energy and money and everything else. They further started looking at it, and as you would expect, like roughly, a little bit more than half were opened several times. And then, in the teens were opened Enough times you would probably say the information, the recommendations, the insights in this report were actually implemented or taken seriously, right? And it just goes to show that, these PDFs, these reports, they'll probably never leave, but the insights in them need to live on and be shared in a way that where people are communicating today and communicating for action, right? Are they designed for action? Are you going to take these policy recommendations, these changes, and actually implement them? Are you going to give them a chance at surviving in this gauntlet of attention-seeking organizations that we work with every day, which many of them are ours, right? There's just too much information at our fingertips. So how do we differentiate and separate and truly create change? I'll kick it over to Mike in a second here, but as we're thinking about really complex topics with a lot of nuance, this is a very logical right side of the brain thinking, right? And I don't know about you, but how many of you actually popped open? There may be a lot of legal counsel here, I'm not sure, but opened a PDF and read it, start front cover to the end, and just like really focus on reading comprehension of all that information. Maybe you're required to for your job. Would you do that if it was not for your job? Would you do that for having fun? Would you consume information like that? Well, advocacy, communications for constituents outside of it, this is not their job. They're doing this on top of their job, whether they're employees or other organizations. And I think that's really, really relevant. How are we packaging and how are we communicating to them? Mike?
Yeah, I mean, how do we get them to care? Emotion. I mean, that's how we do it. That PDF is full of reason. It's full of logic, it's full of data, it's full of actionable steps, but the actual opening of it, cracking open that PDF and trying to read from page 1 on, unless you have an emotional pull, unless there's a reason to do so, you're probably not going to. And this is something that we've been honing and I've been working on for many years now. And it's the idea that, you have to have both that logical and emotional pull in order to create advocates for people to take action. And one great way to do that is through, storytelling. And, storytelling is a buzzword that gets thrown around all the time. And what we are trying to do these days is take sort of the scientific end of storytelling. Storytelling kind of has that emotional connotation right off the bat. But when we marry data with story, people are much more likely to retain it, and they're much more likely to actually internalize it and put themselves in certain situations. So like Patrick said, we're trying to mobilize, we're trying to engage with folks whose primary job function is not to write a letter to Congress. They're working on whatever widget, whatever thing your company does all day, every day. They have a very specific job function. They're at home. Maybe their kids are working or doing school from home these days. Who knows what's going on? We're vying for that attention. Again, we're back to the 8 seconds again. So we have to grab these people. We have to make sure that they feel something, and we have to give them a story and data. Like all of these things are table stakes these days, because all we have to do is open up, Patrick opening up Instagram for the 34th time today and, kind of being grabbed by something. What just happened? Oh, he's learning about something. He's reading the caption. Here's the story. Here's the data behind it. We're all being inundated with these things every day, and we're not even realizing that it's happening. And there are real ways to do this, and it's through different means like video. Video is definitely one of the best ways to do visual storytelling. And, it's the kind of thing where we talk about, we're talking about Quorum here. And, Quorum, not a video platform, there's no video tools on there. Well, cool. Guess what? You can embed your videos on there. And when we do things like that, when we put, and this is me talking about our own experience at LG&D with clients, when we put videos on pages where we're asking for things, or when we're asking for people to understand what the company is trying to say there, the amount of action that happens and the amount of understanding that happens goes up by a lot. It makes a huge difference. So activating kind of that storytelling lens on those individual pages is just a easy way. Photos, great. Great text, great copy, great. Video, actually storytelling through those, even better. And we're going to talk through a few examples here.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything to clarify on video on Quorum? We know you can embed it more, but
did I lie?
How
Did I
are
make something
our
up?
companies using that right now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and you definitely did not mischaracterize that at all. You certainly can embed videos and take advantage of different, video content within the Quorum platform. What we've seen to be most effective, and I don't want to give anything away too early here, but pairing your video with some sort of gamification program so that there's an added incentive for folks to watch this video. Then once they start actually watching the video, it's super engaging content, and it's going to come at them in a format that's a lot more appealing than reading a PDF. And so you're going to have a lot more people willing to even engage in the first place, but then actually retain that information more on the back end.
Cool. So Mike and I will pass it back and forth in these next few sections, but one of the things we think about a lot with digital storytelling, with designing for action, is that we're competing for attention, right? As we said, this quote really stuck out to me because it made me really sad. But it also just communicated how things are working today, right? Everybody's been there where, they got the notification. Are you still watching? It's really sad to say, yes, you are, right? It's like, does it go automatically? I don't want to say yes. Yes, I'm still watching. I love this show. So, employees were telling Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, sometimes, they were saying, like, do we compete with Fox or HBO or Amazon streaming? And he said, no, we're competing with people's time, and at nighttime, we're competing with sleep, and we're winning. I left that out of this because I want it to be forgotten for the most part, but like, they're winning at ensuring that we're spending time with them. So the whole idea of like our attention spans are falling to 8 seconds, not true if you have really great content, and Netflix has discovered that, right? People are willing to spend time with them. And sure, we're not going to have movie studios and take over an entire town in California and have, Netflix, a company, but we can create assets that are worthy of people's time. And we can do it in a way where we're spending a lot of money and time already in the advocacy and marketing fields. It's all about just using those resources to communicate in a better way. So Mike, you want to take this one?
Sure. So it's the whole point here is that it's not slowing down either. I mean, Google buying YouTube, and I personally remember this. I remember they bought it for 1.65 billion. And one quick question here that I love is, how long does it take them to do that today in terms of revenue? Because at the time it was an enormous sum. It was one of the largest acquisitions that had ever happened. Stockholders didn't like it. They thought it was ridiculous. Today, you fast forward to 2021, YouTube is a cash cow. When you look at Google's 10-year plan, they were exactly right. They could not have made a better acquisition. Wasn't too long after that Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion. And, today that investment is looking pretty smart. I'm watching these results come in. The answer here is 3 weeks. So every 3 weeks, they're making almost, a little over $1.5 billion in revenue, which was their entire purchase price back in 2006. They could not have picked a better platform to engage people on their attention spans. I mean, YouTube is kind of the ADD playground. It is like, what's next? What am I watching? Oh, it's just going to autoplay things that it might think that I will like. This is something that you are competing with, because don't forget, thinking back to that original poll, asking about engagement and how you're doing it. So if you're sending that email to someone who works with you or works for your company, that YouTube, that Netflix icon might be right next to their email icon on their phone. So they're opening up that email. You want them to pay attention to this. Well, you might have that 8 seconds to hook them. And we have to make sure that we're, giving them compelling content. Again, probably without the explosions, without the A-list celebrity actors, but we have to make sure that we're giving them something that hits both sides of their brain so that they become engaged, and they become advocates. And that was something that we did here, just getting into a specific case study. This is for National Cable Television Association. So a team and I went out to St. Francis, Kansas, to talk to some folks out there who had gone door to door with a petition to bring broadband to a very small rural town. And their whole thought was, hey, our town's dying. We don't have the infrastructure from an internet perspective to support this new work environment where people are working remotely, they're working from home. Our kids in the schools aren't able to do online classes, video conferences, things like that. So they actually went door to door and got enough signatures where Eagle Communication, which is a broadband provider in that area, went out there and laid fiber throughout the whole town. We were told very enthusiastically by a man who flies a crop duster that his daughter, who works for Google in Manhattan, has slower internet than him in his barn in St. Francis, Kansas. He was very proud of that. And what we did was, we really created this environment where we focused in on a hero. And, the hero was Jason, who you're seeing here in this GIF on loop. And he's the guy who started the Town Council for Fast Internet. I think that's literally what the name was. And he now works for Eagle and goes out and hooks all these people up to the new fast internet. And what it's done for the town and what it's done for the community, which was a kind of a dying agricultural town, has been amazing. Kids are taking classes at local colleges while they're still in high school online through computer labs. Businesses are coming back. People whose families are from the area are moving back into town and then working for big tech companies all over the world because they can. But what you didn't hear me talk about in any of that was that, we're making a video that highlights the importance of this one cable company and for NCTA. And so you take something like this and you take this really personal story of a hero and a small town, and it's a very emotional thing. And there's data in here, there's definitely data. How fast is it? How many people signed up? What is it meant for the town growth projection numbers? There's definitely data, but it's pulling on that emotional angle. And if you want to set up your people for an ask and you put a video like this next to it, Ari's not going to stand behind me here, but I'm going to say it, that you're going to have a much, much higher engagement ratio by an order of magnitude, because you've grabbed them with that emotional lens where suddenly they care. If I went to those same people on this imaginary Quorum website and said, hey, we're the cable industry and we need your help with this, that's not quite as compelling as, hey, look what we did here. Look how we're helping to save this small town who put their hand up and said, hey, we need this. And suddenly the engagement numbers go through the roof. And that's the kind of content creation that I think really speaks to, what can be powerful when you're creating these individual campaigns. This as well, this is something that I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with. Steve and back to the team over at Toyota are an incredible partner, and we're very honored to work with them. Stephen had this idea for this amazing Take 5 series at a time when the 2020 election was, just fast, furious, hot, however you want to describe it in kind of retrospect here. Things didn't feel great. And he wanted to challenge us, himself, the entire team. What can we create to engage and to help our people understand what's happening here through a nonpartisan lens, and just sort of explain, because it's complicated. It's crazy what's happening. And so we combined things like original illustration, imagery, design, voiceover, music, animation, and a really carefully crafted script that Stephen wrote, and came up with these Take 5 video series. And so far we've done 3 of these, and they've been viewed more than 7,000 times. And this metric I love, 70% of people watched it from beginning to end. These are 5-minute videos. You know, we tell new clients all the time, like they'll say 5 minutes. I'm like, too long. You know, again, 8 seconds, we're competing. We have to get there. But if you have great content, great script, great visuals to support it, suddenly people will pay attention. So I think that, you know, part of what we're trying to show here is, you know, these are ways that we can do things to create that emotional pull, that logical, rational pull at the same time to, you know, we're in the marketplace for attention. We're competing with Netflix. We're competing with YouTube. That icon might be right next to it. How do we create something to get people to care? And that's super important. And that's what we're trying to do here with video. I think the other way to do it is through mapping. Mapping is one of the most successful methods that we've had for storytelling, which kind of sounds counter. You know, you would think it would be video. Video is fantastic. Video can have mapping within it, but maps represent our local communities. And the first thing that everyone does when they check out a map, and we're all, I'm sure, you know, we've all done this. You see a tool, you see a map, and it's, you know, maybe it's a congressional thing, maybe it's on an advocacy site, maybe it's, you know, what's for dinner, it's anything. It's on the New York Times, it's on an app. What do? You go home. You want to see what's near you, because we all do that. You know, it's all about me, and I want to see what's happening here. And really, we're trying to explore the world around us. We're trying to create, you know, an understanding of what's happening, what we're seeing. And maps are a really powerful tool to be able to do that from an advocacy perspective. And one of the places we did that was with the solar industry. Patrick, if you want to touch on that a little bit, I know you love this one.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, really loved working with the SCIA and Tim Cook. No, we didn't work with Tim, but he did like it and he shared it. So that was pretty cool. Those are always like the fun memories you have when you put out good work and you're like, somebody says they like it and they're proud of it. And you're like, wow, that one will go down in history and in the bank of my mind and nowhere else. But that's why we put it here for visual. So the solar industry, they put out this report every year. Businesses are building solar on top of their physical offices, their buildings, commercial leases, and more. And they're going to a more sustainable energy future, right? This is a big issue right now in Washington and in policy. But in particular, they put out this report every year and it just wasn't getting a lot of attention. So we said, okay, let's take a look at this data. Let's put it in an interactive educational piece, which just feels pretty cool. And then let's highlight specific organizations that are leading the way. And Target, as a corporation, was leading the way for a number of years. And then Apple built its big Silicon Valley headquarters. And man, is that thing cooking with the sun. And so they went to number one. They shot up because it's all based upon capacity. And they shot up through it. And then, you know, we pitched this. One thing to note, it's not just, you know, it's funny. It's like, what are our audiences? No, it's government, it's media, it's people, it's all these different things. And it's like, they're all people, right? Like they may care about different things, but for the most part, you know, they're similar in that they go, this is cool. I want to pay attention to it. I want to spend time with it. And when you're building things like this, it's not only great from a educational standpoint, interactive standpoint for whether it's employees or policymakers and more, but reporters love it as well. And this is a great method for pitching and getting your information out there, is actually building something for them to care about. And we're really proud of this one. Another one we did here was with Toyota. Last year, we did their virtual Washington week. It was their idea on a fly-in, right? We couldn't do a physical fly-in, so they went virtual. Stephen and team were very, very specific that they did not want to create a physical fly-in digitally. They wanted to reimagine, right? I think that's really important. Not only when we're thinking about digital and we used to do something physically, but in the coming months, years here, when we go back to physical, are we just going to recreate the digital to physical? Are we going to go back to just doing the physical the same way? There's a great opportunity coming up to say, let's keep the greatest things we've done about digital and let's rethink physical, because now we're coming back and it's going to be special. So how do we really unlock that too? I think is really important. This map allowed people to guess the Senate races as well as the election headed into virtual Washington week here and the national election. And so it was really, really cool interactive piece, and they could see where their employees were voting and how they were predicting things. Kind of interesting. And I look back on those data and they're pretty right. Right. So that's cool. You got to engage constituency advocacy group over at Toyota. Definitely something to be desired. Gamification here, as Ari was talking about it earlier, is just one of the things that we're very proud of, but also something that is, when you're thinking about designing for action, is really just at the heart of it, right? It's how do we make something interactive to the point that we care, right? Anybody know who this is? This is Alex Toussaint. He will kick your ass on Peloton, right? And he doesn't kick my ass enough, noticeable, but he's really good. And they've done a wonderful job of gamification. You get to see whether that's your own output and your own pace, your tags, your all-time records, individuals' all-time records, as well as the broader community. You get to track heart rate and more, and it's just the complete definition of what gamification is. And gamification is community, right? We are working together, we are interacting together on something to create action and to create point system and more. And a lot can be achieved in the advocacy space when it comes to gamification. Really proud of this work we did with the Benioff Ocean Initiative out of University California, Santa Barbara. They were tracking whale sounds, acoustics, very PhD, smart tech, data driven. And they were looking at shipping companies and whether they were abiding by a voluntary restriction on speed, right? It just goes to show, like, we've been shipping a lot more lately. Ships are getting bigger. This is a natural whale habitat. They're getting hit, right? Whales are dying. I don't know what to tell you. You know, we grew up with Free Willy, or at least I did. I have an affinity towards this. I get it. It's important. We have to save them. Mike, you want to say something towards this?
I don't know how to follow that. You went to Free Willy. I've got nothing.
Okay.
No, it's important. It's important. Definitely.
Absolutely. And so, you know, the whole idea here, though, like, look, like, these mammals and these creatures are beautiful. This is a natural habitat, and we're interacting in the environment and the natural habitat of people. We're trying to co-balance and coexist. What people don't know is that, you know, when ships go fast, they end up hitting these whales, and, you know, it can lead to death, and it's spiking right now. And so they built a tool here to have scorecards and more for whether it's whale presence, or, you know, ship collisions and much more. And, you know, they get graded on this stuff. So they're not going out there, they're not publicly shaming these companies. They're just putting out the data, putting out the facts, and your score can change over time. And so we're just really proud of this work, and the UCSD people, very professional, kind, and just extremely talented. And shout out to our CTO, Ryan McCann, who is a wizard and, you know, helped build this, and it's just really cool product. This is Toyota's. This is unique, interesting. They came out with ninjas, and they were doing gamification on their quorum site specifically. And when you watch the video, as Ari said, when you participated in interactive mapping, anything you did, they tied it and they said, do this, you get points towards something. Got to catch them all, right? And more so with the ninjas, how do we get up to, you know, just levitating black belt ninja status that we all want to become is just really, really cool. And Mike, we recently put together these. You want to talk through them?
Yeah, I mean, you know, part of it, that first original Ninja drive we did was, you know, it's something new, like gamification on Quorum. We wanted to see with Toyota what that looked like and how well it would engage with people, and trying to level up your Ninja. And, you know, you can look around, there's been some awards, some webinars, some things with Toyota talking about how well that worked. I won't belabor that. But this year, we definitely stepped things up, and we're working on a set of 5 superheroes. There's something about the consistency of the 5 levels, between the two. It becomes something interesting for people to, I wonder what next year will be. And again, it's all about just that engagement. It's trying to capture that, hey, this is cool, or, just that little spark of, oh, I want to get from this superhero to level up to this next one. We want to give them some excitement in it, and I think the gamification really does that. And when you marry that with these very specific tiers and levels that are kind of surprising, right? I mean, it's not like 5 levels based on Toyota automobiles. It's like something a little bit more left field and a little bit more exciting for people to try to engage with. And it's something that we saw out of 2020. 2020 was a tough year on everybody. And how do we not just keep hitting people with asks to get involved and get engaged, but to level up to achieve something that they visually see as really cool? And this is an awesome quote here that Patrick loves, and it's something that we talk a lot about here at LG&D as Pixar. Patrick, I'll let you take this. I know Ari.
Yeah, no, I mean, Creativity Inc. is like a driving book for us, and it should be for any organization, because Steve Jobs, he was like, oh, you don't want me at Apple? I'm going to start the coolest animation company in the world. It's like, who is this guy? So he started Pixar with Ed Catmull, which, if you don't know, came out of Lucasfilms, because George Lucas, Star Wars, essentially saw the need early, and then Steve Jobs bought it, and then Steve Jobs worked together with Ed and teams to tell stories and just try to be the best in terms of computer animation and storytelling. And then they got bought by Disney, and the rest is history. And so the whole idea here, though, be patient, be authentic, be consistent. The trust will come. And I mean, you all have heard that phrase in policy and politics: the best time to make friends is before you need them, right? And if you want something done today, it's going to be a low likelihood that that occurs, right? Unless you have built up the relationship and the trust and credibility beforehand. So if you want something tomorrow, you start it today, right? And that's when it comes to advocacy and content generation, designing for action. As you saw with those Quorum Take 5 videos from Toyota, they weren't about the issues, right? It was just good information. It was something that people wanted going into that moment. That's an authentic storytelling device. And now we're working with Toyota actually on EV communication, right? Which I think is really interesting in light of everything going on with policy. And this one will be very issue specific about their industry. And so they can be both ways, but the point is are you giving content to people? Are they enjoying it? Are they loving it? So I'll turn it back over to Ari. We'll bring it together and also make time for any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I really can't stress enough the importance of hearing from your advocates themselves. Like, what kinds of content do they want to see? What sorts of, issues do they want to hear you talk about? What types of asks are they willing to do? You really want to collect that feedback and not just take a guess. One statistic that Toyota really pays close attention to is their reply rate, which I don't see a ton of organizations really pay super close attention to. But what that tells them is how engaging their content is. They want to see, dozens, if not hundreds of their advocates say, oh my God, this game was so fun, or that was such an interesting video that you put together. That's a sign that you're doing something right. If nobody responds, or the actions flow in, but you're not hearing anything back from your advocates, it's probably because your content wasn't that interesting. So the LG&D team has discussed a ton of amazing ways to tell these stories and share your organization's message with your advocates. But I want to think a little bit about how we can bring all of these pieces together, right? To get these people engaged at the beginning, you want to bring these resources to the channels where you're already communicating with your advocates, whether that's in your emails or at your events, whether they're in person or virtual. even in your workplaces. So for the Toyota team, they went to different in-person facilities to meet the employees and teach them about advocacy. Another one of the organizations that I work with, the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, they started a gamification program and sent out branded marketing packages to their grass tops advocates at their various member associations. Those grass tops advocates then hung up posters, passed out swag that promoted their advocacy campaign and started generating buzz amongst the member company employees. So just little things like that, really taking advantage of the channels where you already have these people's attention can make it go that extra mile. You also don't want to forget about social media as well as texting. And all of these different communication channels can come together in one place with the Quorum platform. That's why it's so nice to have this one-stop shop to really address the different communications and the different channels that you can take advantage of. So like, of course you get their attention initially with, meeting them at the channels that they're already at. But you want to make sure that they're coming back for more. And so that's where the gamification can really come in for you. Introducing gamification can, get them to be on the lookout for that next email or that next text, so they know what to expect and understand why it's important. Think of, the example that we had earlier with Peloton, or some of the news stories that I'm sure you've seen around Robinhood, or if any of you are trying to learn a language with Duolingo, getting those little notifications that, you're 5 points away from reaching the next level, or haven't heard from you in a few days, can really give those just small messages that encourage folks to keep coming back. And then the way to really take your gamification to the next level is not just creating the point values and setting up the levels and letting people have at it, but really associating those levels and the different advancement up that ladder with real world prizes. Now, these can be monetary prizes like gift cards or vacations or a new grill, but it can also be access or opportunities for recognition. What's most important is that you align those prizes with the personas of your advocates. Is a top level CEO at one of your member companies going to be super excited about an opportunity to get recognized at your next conference? Probably not, because they're leading that conference. But one of your average facility workers might be super enthused about that recognition in front of all of their colleagues and coworkers. So you really want to be conscious of what different types of incentives are going to actually resonate with different groups of advocates. And then, additionally, it really, you want to give them that emotional appeal that Patrick and Mike were talking about earlier. Having that, animation that jumps up across the screen, or the, dopamine jolt they get from making it to the next level, can really serve as that emotional reminder for why they keep coming back. And in between, the gamification, the levels, the dancing animations, you want to make sure that you're staying engaged with your advocates, and you don't always want it to be an ask. And, that can actually be a good thing to have engagements that you're not asking for anything. And so this can, manifest in a number of different ways. One thing that Quorum does that's really valuable is the issue pages, where you can build out videos or, infographics or any sort of content that you want related to a specific issue. Then direct folks to, hey, take a look at this video or read up on this latest issue. You're not really asking them to, take action or call their legislator. Just, hey, here's what we're working on. Wanted to, make sure that you saw this. Then you have the ability to link your relevant campaigns so that as soon as they're done watching the video and they're all excited about electric vehicles or whatever it may be, there are relevant campaigns for them to take action on right away. All right, and so what we're seeing here on the screen is an organization that has taken advantage of these different tactics that we're talking about here. So this is a little GIF of Toyota's Action Center, complete with all of their fancy graphics, their videos, and their gamification program. And what that gave them was an average response rate of 50%. So out of all of their calls to action, all of their advocates average 50% response rate whenever Toyota calls on them to write their legislator or watch this video. So if you implement some of the strategies that we talked about today, this too can be your organization and the response rate that you get to your advocacy calls to action. So I know we are running up on time here, but I want to make sure that we have a second to answer any questions that have come in here. You can also feel free to reach out to me or either of our friends here at LGND. My email is ari@quorum.us. And then we have Mike at lgnd.com and Patrick at lgnd.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think since we're coming up on time, if you have any of those questions, just reach out to us directly over email. Always glad to chat 90s movies and how they've influenced my thinking as from today. Thank you, Mike. Like still making fun of me for the Free Willy comment. So I'm down because Michael Jackson has a really good song at the end of that movie, and it's really good. Just look for that. All I'm saying. Cool. Thank you all today for coming to this webinar, Designing for Action. Quorum's a wonderful partner. Thank you, Ari, for hosting us and collaborating with us on this. We've had a great time. But overall, really be thinking about like the products you build and how that there doesn't always have to be something you want from them from an ask perspective. That asks to be as simple as gain these points, become a part of this community, because one day you will need them, right? You will need your stakeholders, whether they're employees or outside suppliers or more. Talking to them today and building up those relationships is key to, leveraging those relationships tomorrow. And that's what it really comes down to. So with that, I'll close it up. Mike, Ari, anything else?
Thank you, Patrick. Just letting folks know that you will all receive an email with a recording of today's session. And if you want to learn more about Quorum, you can always visit quorum.us, or if you're a current client, you can reach out to your customer success manager. And then, of course, if you want to learn more about LGND and their work, you can go to lgnd.com.
All right.
Thank you all. This was fun.